Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. Statistically, do you know what you like listening to the most and reading the most on castingacross.com? It is conversations about fly fishing gear, reviews, analysis, news, all of that sort of stuff when it comes to fly fishing gear rises to the top of the views and the downloads. Now, I write and talk about plenty of other things, but I do enjoy talking about gear for a few reasons. One, I like it. I know it's not the most important thing in fly fishing, but it's an aspect of fly fishing, kind of that culture of fly fishing that I enjoy. That's the first thing. The second thing is I like something that is going to give me even an incremental step up as far as my comfort or my convenience when I'm on the water. If I can do it a little bit lighter, a little bit faster, or maybe a little bit more efficiently, then I'm going to like that. And then thirdly, I like helping people discover those things, whether it be something brand new or even just communicating the value of something that they've seen, but they might be on the edge about. And being honest about that. Like, the gear isn't going to make the experience. It might alter the experience, maybe for the better. And so having that set of priorities and then communicating that to folks that, this stuff, it matters, but it's not the most important thing. But if you're on the edge between A and B, might be a reason why you would go with one over the other. So with that said, with that in mind, with the fact that you like listening to this kind of stuff, today I want to talk about gear that has features that may appear gimmicky, but may actually really be beneficial, especially if you're not going to have to shell out any more money, or if there is a particular reason why you would want a piece of gear with one of these particular features, or if money's not an option, why it's worth spending that extra few bucks. And the first one, just to kind of give you an example we're talking about, but I think is a good kind of case study in this, is zippered waders. Okay, zippered waders. Now, a few things are immediately thought of, at least from my experience online and in conversation with people, when you talk about zippered waders. The first one is, why would you put a zipper on a thing that's supposed to be underwater and keeping you dry? Well, I think needless to say, these companies are not foolish, and the zippers that they use are very, very high quality waterproof zippers. Now, waterproof zippers are very, very different than a conventional zipper. They are much bigger, bulkier, and they have a couple more moving parts. And so they are actually waterproof. The second thing that people say is, isn't this just a way for men to relieve themselves on the water a little bit more efficiently? Well, most pairs that I've tried on, and the pair that I own, it terminates like kind of between the navel and the waistline. So you'd still have to do a little bit of work if you're a guy and you wanted to use those waders for that purpose. And if you're a woman, you're still doing a lot of work. And I don't think they've created those waders with like the union suit back flap like you see in the old cartoons, and had that so that you can just pop that open on the water. But I'm sure it's coming. But why would you want these? Okay, if it does keep you dry, but it's not just for going to the bathroom, what's the point of having these? Well, the first thing that I noticed when I got a pair was that they're really easy to get into. So I, at present, thank the Lord, don't have mobility issues. But when you're really bundled up in the wintertime and you've got layers and layers and layers on, and you zip that thing wide open, you sit on your tailgate or in the side of your car, you can basically, it's like putting on a pair of pants as opposed to putting on a pair of waders. Now, you might say, I don't see the big deal. That's not an issue for me. Well, for you, it might not be, but I can certainly see how someone with some mobility issues, some flexibility issues, this would be a huge beneficial thing for them. Now, I am not to the point where I say, okay, this is like the only way I'm going to fish. I have 3 primary pairs of waders that I fish and hunt in. My hunting insulated waders are chest waders that don't zip. My primary waders that I fish in also don't zip, but they are convertible. And the third pair is a pair of zippered waders, and they're kind of a lightweight pair. But they also kind of function as a convertible pair of waders. So if I'm fishing in the summertime, or I'm fishing in the early season in the spring or late season in the fall, and I'm bundled up and I have a little more layers on, the zippered wader gives me the opportunity to unzip that thing down to the middle of my chest or even down to my waist, and I can then get that ventilation that I wouldn't otherwise have. So that's another good benefit that I've found with that. The other thing too is if you have a jacket with all sorts of pockets or things like that in them, then having that zipper, you can unzip that as long as you're not as so deep that you would now be submerging yourself. But now you can access those pockets, and that's a lot more convenient than reaching down into your jacket to access stuff. I mean, I actually notice this a lot when I'm hunting because I have a hunting jacket that has all sorts of pockets that I keep little tools and gadgets in, and it is very inconvenient to reach down into my chest waders to grab those. But I imagine if I had zippered waders that I was hunting in, that wouldn't be as big of a deal. So if that's something that you want to do, if that's something that is your preferred way of fishing, then zippered waders would be a good option for you. So it's not gimmicky. It certainly has a function, but it does cost a little bit more money. But if, again, one of those situations appeals to you or would make your fishing much easier, and you can either find them on sale or on a deal, or you're able to spend the next 10 to 20% more than the standard non-zippered waders, then it's definitely something worth considering. I would just say go and try them on and give it a shot. Look for something on Closeout if you're a little bit skeptical, but you like the idea of trying zippered waders. The next thing that I think is worth considering that is not a gimmick, that is not just a marketing technique, is on a reel, two oversized components. And one of those is an oversized drag knob, and the other one is an oversized reel handle. So an oversized drag knob and an oversized reel handle. So some of my favorite fly fishing reels are older kind of click pawl reels from the late 90s and that era. And at this point in time, when it was really before large arbor reels took off, and it was really before some of the more contemporary reel stylings, both in frame design and in porting shapes and things like that came into place, certainly with reel handles and drag knobs. And so some of my favorite reels have these really tiny drag knobs that are effectively like the end of a pencil, like the eraser end of the pencil, and then the drag knob is a little dial that is not that much bigger than like a something that you would use on an older car radio. But something that is much more common now is large, easy to grab, easy to use when you've got gloves on, when you have wet fingers, when you are not looking at your reel, when you're looking at your fish that you're fighting or that you are making a presentation to. Knobs and handles that may even have some rubberization, may have some notches cut into them so that you can get a little bit of friction. And I genuinely think that this is a great aspect to a reel. Is it gimmicky? No. I haven't seen one that's so outsized that I would kind of, blush by having that thing on the water. But seeing a reel that's advertised as having a large handle or a large drag knob is a great thing, and it's definitely worth considering. Again, if you're fishing with gloves on, so for steelhead or maybe in the salt late or early in the season, if you're fishing for trout throughout the winter time, that in fish that you need to engage your drag while fishing for them, then having that bigger reel knob and having that bigger drag handle is a very worthwhile thing. Now, could there be some situations and circumstances where it's less than ideal? If you're fishing for fish that are going to take off on immediately fast, long, blistering runs, then it might not be the best choice for you because now you have something large spinning around at a high rate of speed that could potentially wrap your knuckles that much quicker or grab fly line. So that would be a situation where an oversized reel handle would not be ideal. But if you're, again, fishing for, something like Great Lakes steelhead, or you're fishing for large trout in lakes, or if you're fishing for smallmouth bass, then having that reel handle be a little bit easier to grab is a great thing. So there's a number of reels that are being produced with larger drag knobs, and actually you can always replace your reel handle. You can go out and buy an aftermarket one. It's not something that a lot of people do, but again, if mobility is an issue or you're fishing in gloves, then this is definitely worth looking into. Getting something that's a little bit bigger, as well as something that has a rubberized pad on either side of that handle. And, having something that spins smoothly and something that is able to rotate well are very important things also. Things that you don't think about until it becomes a problem. And aspects of a reel, like a drag knob and a reel handle, definitely would fit into that category. So first thing is a pair of waders with a zipper is worth looking at if that fits your needs. Secondly is a reel with a larger drag knob and reel handle is worth looking into as well. Third thing, a pair of boots with removable studs, a pair of wading boots with removable studs. So obviously the easiest thing to do in this situation is have a pair of corkers, right? So I'm not going to drop a ton of brand names on this podcast, but this is one that's relatively simple and worth pointing out because, of course, Corkers has interchangeable sole systems. And one of the primary pairs of boots that I will use when I'm fishing is a pair of corkers. And so I'm able to go from rubber to studded rubber to felt to rubber, big rubber metal lugs based on the situation that I find myself in. However, there are other pairs of boots and other sole systems out there that allow for removable studs. Now, why would you want studs in the first place? Well, studs do give you better traction. They allow you to grip into the rocks. They allow you to grip into harder, more firm banks, and even something like a gravel substrate or a sand substrate. When the current is quick, those studs will give you a benefit. And contrary to popular belief, it is not that they are so hard that you're going to dig into the rocks using those studs. Sometimes they're malleable enough that they'll actually kind of conform a little bit and just kind of smush around as you walk on hard surfaces. But why would you not want that? Well, there's a few reasons. One, you're getting someone's drift boat. Okay, they don't want your studded boots in their drift boat. There's some guides that'll just say, take your boots off or use these or something like that. Another reason why you might not want them is if you are fishing on, say, like a spring creek or a very slow moving stream where it is a hard bottom, and that noise of you click clacking on the rocks will send those fish scurrying. Another example of a reason why you wouldn't want them would be just varied conditions. There are times when studs aren't going to perform as well as a smoother sole based upon what you are walking on. But that shows that there's situations where it's good to have them, and there's situations where it's good not to have them. So to have that flexibility on a good pair of wading boots is going to give you the ankle support that you need. That's going to be comfortable on your foot. It's going to that's going to be, the right size so that you're able to have a little bit of blood flow going on and all that sort of stuff. To be able to have that flexibility is really important. So if a pair of boots advertises as removable soles or interchangeable soles or replaceable soles, that's definitely something, or studs, then that is definitely something worth looking into. Now, does that mean that you're going to take them on and take them off multiple times throughout the course of the day? Probably not. But if it gives you that flexibility to have studs or not have studs, from going from one stream to another stream or from one trip to the next trip, the times when you're walking and wading, you're able to have them in. The times you're fishing from a drift boat, you're able to have them out. And it's less expensive and maybe a little more efficient to only have one pair of boots than to have two pair of boots, then it's definitely worth looking into. Now, one of the things that I want to be clear about is that if you are putting like aftermarket studs that have like a screw-in back portion into your normal rubber-soled wading boots, and they don't have some sort of receptacle or receiver or kind of female end to put those in there, you're going to want to leave those in. You're not going to want to screw them in and screw them out, because although that rubber is going to have some memory and going to have some grip, you're effectively making a hole, and then by taking that screw out, you're making that hole bigger, and it's not going to grip as well the next time. So you do have some ability to put them in and take them out and put them in again when you are simply screwing a stud into the bottom of your boot. But it's much better if you have a pair of boots that has some sort of receiver for those studs or some other system where you're able to put them in and take them out. And maybe even, and this goes beyond the scope of this podcast, configure in different ways based on how you walk and how you wade and what you're doing and the flows of where you're fishing and the substrate of what you're walking on. Where those studs are actually located. Again, there's much more to say about that, but this would be the third thing that I would say is worth paying attention to and worth maybe even spending a few more dollars if you want a little bit more of a versatile pair of wading boots. So the fourth thing then is multicolored fly line. Multicolored fly line. Now, you may have seen multicolored fly line and thought, well, that's just for people who want to have a pretty line on their reel. And some people might buy it for that reason. But for most multicolored fly lines, there is a reason for it. And it has to do with the transition from the taper. So the head to the belly, for example, or the belly to the shooting line. So again, you have the head of the taper, which is where your leader attaches, and it usually goes from narrow to thicker, thicker, thicker. Then it hits the belly, which is now the thickest portion of the line, and then it tapers down into shooting line, which is for most fly lines, for that matter, the vast majority of that line. So if it's a 90-foot line, then probably 60+% of it is going to be that shooting line. So why would it matter that you know what color it is? Well, if you are casting and retrieving, and then you are retrieving and you hit a certain point and you want to really efficiently make a back cast into a forward cast. So I'm thinking of when I'm fishing in the saltwater and I'm having to lay out double hauls at very long distances when I'm fishing in the surf, and every casting motion I make adds up because I am trying to make one back cast into a forward haul, a backward haul, and then I'm going to try to lay out my presentation. Now, this is most easily achieved if I am making that initial back cast while I have the majority of my head and a little bit of the belly of that fly line out of the rod tip. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to be so dogmatic about it that if there's a fish swirling at my fly or I perceive that there's a fish that's going to be coming in close proximity that I'm going to, cast no matter what. It just means that if I can see where that transition point is between my head of my fly line and my belly of my fly line, I know it's going from gray to yellow, or it's going from purple to clear, and now I bomb back that back cast, and then I'm able to make it my forward haul, my backward haul, and then lay that line out. Now, can you do this by feel? Yes, you can do it by feel. But if I'm stripping quickly for stripers, maybe even with two hands as I'm in the surf, I'm not going to have that same sort of fine dexterity and fine feel that I would have if I was slowly stripping for trout and I could feel my line going from a certain thickness to a smaller diameter. So having that change of color is helpful. It's also helpful too if you're using a sinking head fly line where the front portion of that fly line sinks. You're able to kind of keep track of what's out in front of you. If you're in some sort of situation where you can see the fly line really well, you can track where that line is. If you know that rate of that sink rate, and you know if it's so far out that it's going to be dropping at a certain rate to a certain place, then you're able to effectively do that math really quickly by saying, I see the transition from color A to color B, so I know that my fly is not just out a certain distance, but it's also at a certain depth. That does give you that benefit as well. And it's also kind of fun and reassuring if you've been a long fight with a hard fighting fish and you see that color change, you know that you're getting closer, and it might be at that point in time that you say, I'm going to pull out my net. So again, is something like I just said, I know I gave some much, much better reasons than leading up to now I can get my net, is saying I want a fly line where I know when to get my net. A good enough reason to pick fly line A over fly line B because fly line A has a color change between the belly and the head. I don't think so. But if you see a couple of fly lines and one has it and one doesn't, and that seems like it's something, again, not the example of now you know when to get your net, but now you know when to pull back into your back cast. Now you're able to track from where the belly switches over to that sinking tip. Those would be reasons to consider that fly line over another one, especially if all things are equal, or if that is worth $5 to you or $10. And between two fly lines, that's probably all it's going to be. If that seems like it's worth it, then by all means, go for it. I've enjoyed it, and I've found that there has been uses that I pick up as I'm on the water using those fly lines. So 4 product categories that have different features that multiple companies have put into their zippered waders, their oversized drag knobs and reel handles on their reels, the removable studs on their wading boots, and multicolored fly line that may sound like marketing talk, they may sound gimmicky, but in reality, there are plenty of situations where those are great things to have, and they may even be worth it to you to spend a few extra bucks to have that sort of thing. So, is there another perceivably gimmicky aspect that of a piece of fly fishing gear that you've noticed that you have questions about, or that you were skeptical about, and then you used and you thought was actually really great, or that you bought because of and you were sorely disappointed? Let me know. Matthew at castingacross.com. I could probably do another podcast with 4 other things. And as new gear comes out every year, every season, there's certainly more things that we could add to these categories as well. This week on the website, castingacross.com, the first article was called Give to Vocation, Receive from Leisure. So this was published on Labor Day, so kind of a short holiday post, but really going against that idea that our work and our play are at odds with one another. I think that you and I are most happy when our work and our play complement each other. They are not opposing forces, but they kind of give and take. And so that is what this short post on Casting Across was about. And then Wednesday's article is called 3 Ways to Save on New Fishing Gear. 3 Ways to Save on New Fishing Gear. And I am a big fan in patronizing local fly shops. And one of the ways to save on new fishing gear involves patronizing local fly shops. The other two, not so much, but this one, one of them does. And so if that is a high priority for you, but you kind of want to find something that you don't think that you'll necessarily see in your local fly shop, this is a way to maybe even support a fly shop all the way across the country and maintain that ethos of shopping small, but still save a lot of money on the precise gear that you need. This week's recommendation is the Recon fly rod from Orvis. So what's special about the Recon? It's not a new fly rod, but the Recon is a great rod because of its performance to price ratio. It is an incredibly high performing fly rod from a very reputable fly fishing company. Orvis is, about as good as it gets. And it retails for under $600. It comes in weights between a 2-weight, both a Euro nymphing model and a conventional model, all the way up to a 12-weight. And there's plenty of examples in between. But I've cast a number of different models of Recon. I've really enjoyed all of them. It's one of those things where I would probably go with a Recon over a Helios if I was given my choice and price was an option. The Helios would probably have to drop maybe $300 for me to say, yeah, I'll definitely go with the Helios over the Recon. The Helios definitely is an excellent rod. I'm certainly not throwing any shade at it, but the Recon is a really, really good rod as well. And it comes in all of the standard weights and lengths, as well as a handful of kind of non-traditional ones as well. But what I would say is if you are looking for a gift, you're looking for an upgrade, if you've been fishing with kind of an entry-level rod, if you want a really high-level rod for a backup rod or a kind of a secondary use rod, like you're used to fishing like a 5-weight, but you want a 7-weight for throwing streamers, then you could do a whole lot worse than the Recon. It is going to be an exceptional rod that you'll probably end up using a lot more than you thought. But this could be your primary rod. Like I said, this could be the rod that you take with you on a trip and you are very, very happy with. I would just say go cast some. There's probably an Orvis store near you, either an Orvis actual company store or an Orvis dealership. I just have really enjoyed casting the Recon. Again, nothing against the higher end rods from Orvis, but for $598, the Recon is really an exceptional rod. I'll go ahead and put a link to the full line of Recon rods over on this podcast show notes over at castingacross.com. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast app and then rate the podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.